Okay, so imagine this. You're building the next, groundbreaking app for patient care. You're a real innovator in the bespoke software development world. You're focused on making healthcare faster, better, more efficient for everyone. And then, bam, you hit this wall called HIPAA. It's this term that just looms large, right? And honestly, it often feels like a total maze for software teams. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into HIPAA compliance, and we're tailoring this specifically for software development organizations like yours. It's critical, yeah, maybe a bit daunting sometimes, but absolutely essential if you're working in healthcare tech.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're actually pulling insights from a really comprehensive course. It's called HIPAA Compliance for Software Development Organizations. It comes straight from Special Man Academy. That's the learning hub of Special Man Global Solution, which is itself a software development company.
Oh, interesting. So it's built by people who actually do this stuff.
Exactly. It's not just theory. It's designed by practitioners, really to help professionals, like you put, HIPAA-compliant practices into action throughout the whole software development lifecycle.
Right. So our mission here is pretty clear then. We want to distill the most important kind of nuggets of knowledge from this material, help you understand what Type A is really about, how it impacts your code directly, and maybe crucially, what happens if you get it wrong, the real-world consequences, the goal. For you to walk away feeling, well, informed, ready to tackle this essential piece of healthcare tech with confidence, not apprehension. So let's start right at the beginning. HIPAA, what does it actually stand for, and what was it originally for? Because, it feels like it's changed quite a bit over the years.
It really has evolved, yeah. So HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It was enacted way back in 1996 by the U.S. Congress. And its initial goals were, well, pretty pragmatic, actually. First, it wanted to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the U.S. healthcare system, basically by standardizing how administrative and financial data was sent electronically.
Okay, like billing and claims,
Yeah.
making that smoother.
Exactly. Streamlining all that stuff across different providers and insurers. Second, it focused on health insurance continuity. That's the portability part, making sure people didn't automatically lose their health insurance just because they changed jobs. That was a big deal back then.
Right, I can see that.
Third, it aimed to cut down on healthcare fraud and abuse. That's the accountability piece. And finally, it introduced something called administrative simplification, standardizing those electronic transactions and, importantly, making sure they were secure.
So, okay, it had these broad goals, but now when people hear IBCI, they pretty much just think privacy and security. When did that shift really happen? What drove it?
That's a great point. The perception definitely narrowed because, well, the focus itself shifted dramatically, especially with the, explosion of digital health information. The really critical updates that cemented HIPAA's role in privacy and security were the privacy rule, effective in 2003, and then the security rule, which kicked in around 2005. And these weren't just minor tweaks. They set strict national standards for protecting health information, confidentiality, security. It fundamentally changed how healthcare data had to be handled.
I see. So, for instance, if a hospital moves from paper charts to a new electronic health record system, EHR, HIPAA would mean that system has to have things like strong user authentication, only the right people get in, and really solid audit controls tracking who did what with the data.
Precisely. That directly impacts the software's architecture, its design, everything. It has to be built in.
It makes you think. How different would healthcare tech, especially for us software folks, look today if HIPAA hadn't set those baseline standards for privacy and security in digital records? What would that actually mean for the kind of bespoke software work you do?
That's quite a thought experiment. Without HIPAA,
Wow.
we'd likely be in a very different place. Almost chaotic, I'd imagine. Sort of a Wild West situation, maybe?
Patient data could be misused, maybe even sold, with very little comeback. Security would be, well, an afterthought, left up to individual hospitals or clinics.
Trust would be low, I guess.
Trust in digital health would probably plummet. Things we take for granted now, like widespread EHR use, telemedicine platforms, they might never have really taken off. And for bespoke software developers, like many listening, it would mean no common ground. Every client might demand different security measures. Imagine the overhead, constant rebuilding, legal nightmares.
Yeah, innovation might actually stall. It's hard to see how the innovation we've seen could have flourished. Breaches would be everywhere, patient confidence shot. So yeah, HIPAA, despite its complexities, provides this essential framework. It actually enables innovation, in a way, by setting that baseline of trust and predictability.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. Not just a burden, but a foundation. Okay, so carrying that forward.
Yeah.
What does this actually mean for your company day-to-day building bespoke software? There's this critical distinction, right, between different players. Who's responsible for what?
Absolutely. Understanding this difference between covered entities and business associates
Hmm.
is, well, fundamental. It determines your specific compliance duties. So covered entities, these are the organizations directly involved in delivering or paying for healthcare.
The obvious ones.
Pretty much. Healthcare providers, doctors, clinics, hospitals, also health plans, think insurers, HMOs. And then there are healthcare clearinghouses, which process health data for others. They're on the front lines,
Okay. And the other group, business associates.
right? Business associates, or BAs. These are organizations, or even individuals, who perform services for or on behalf of a covered entity. And crucially, doing that service involves accessing protected health information, or PHI. This is where most software companies, cloud service providers, data processors, this is where you likely fall if you're serving healthcare clients.
So even if you never see a patient.
Exactly. If you create, receive, maintain, or transmit PHI for a covered entity, you're probably a business associate.
Okay, so let's make that concrete. A company, maybe like one of our listeners, developing custom telehealth software for a hospital system. They're the business associate.
Definitely. They're handling PHI on the hospital's behalf.
And the hospital using the software is the covered entity.
Correct. It's a distinct relationship, but very connected. Shared responsibility.
There's a contract involved, right?
Yes, absolutely crucial. The Business Associate Agreement, or BAA, this isn't just paperwork, it's a legally binding contract. It spells out your specific obligations to protect the PHI that the covered entity shares with you or that you create for them. So for example, if your company provides cloud hosting for a clinic's patient portal, you're a BA. You must have a signed BAA with that clinic. It defines your legal duties under IPA, non-negotiable.
Wow, okay. Missing a BAA sounds like a huge misstep. But how might a software company become a BA almost? Accidentally, without realizing it. Think about third-party tools you might plug in or analytics services. It's not always as clear-cut as building the whole patient portal, is it?
You're absolutely right. It's a common trap, actually. One way is through sort of indirect access. Let's say your software is a scheduling tool for a clinic. To make it work better, maybe you pull patient names and appointment reasons from their main system. Even if you aren't the full EHR, the second you handle that combination, identifying info plus health details, boom, you could be handling PHI, making you a BA.
Even just for scheduling optimization.
Potentially, yes. Another common scenario is with analytics or, say, debugging tools. If you use a third-party analytics service and your app sends crash reports or usage data, and that data incidentally includes some PHI, maybe a patient ID slipped in, or a timestamp link to a specific patient action, then that analytics provider might become a BA.
And you need a BAA with them.
You would. Or if you are providing that analytics service to a covered entity, you definitely need one. Even things like customer support chat logs or email systems. If they end up containing PHI, that can trigger BAA requirements with your vendors, like your email provider. It really demands a careful look at all your data flows.
That's a critical point, that incidental access. It really
Yeah.
broadens the scope. Okay, so we know who's involved, covered entities, business associates. The next absolutely vital piece is, what are we actually protecting? Let's unpack protected health information, or PHI.
Right. PHI is, well, it's the heart of HIPAA compliance. It's defined as any health information related to an individual's past, present, or future physical or mental health,
Mm-hmm.
or the health care they receive, or the payment for that health care. That's the health information part. The key is this info must be created, received, or maintained by a covered entity or a business associate, and has to identify the individual, or there has to be a reasonable basis to believe it could be used to identify them.
Okay, so it's the health info plus the identifier.
Exactly. That combination is critical. And remember, PHI isn't just electronic. It can be on paper, even spoken oral information. But for your teams, a really key insight, PHI isn't static. Data that seems harmless, maybe anonymized, it can instantly become PHI if it gets linked, even indirectly, back to a person.
The re-identification risk.
Precisely. It's a major blind spot sometimes. It demands really strict data governance right from the start of development.
So to be crystal clear, we're talking obvious identifiers. Names, addresses, phone numbers, emails, social security numbers, medical record numbers.
Yes, all those.
But also things like medical diagnoses, test results, prescriptions, medical images, biometrics, even billing info if it's linked to a patient.
Correct. That link is the key. It's a very broad definition.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you have a database with just blood pressure readings, maybe aggregated anonymous data from thousands of people. No names, no identifiers. That's not PHI. It's just data.
Okay.
But the moment you pair those same blood pressure readings with names or
Right.
email addresses or maybe unique device IDs assigned to specific users, it instantly becomes PHI. Now it's protected under HIPAA. Context and linkage, that's everything.
Okay, that raises a really important question for developers and architects then. Can data that seems harmless, maybe even you've tried to de-identify it, can it become PHI again if it's combined with another data set? How does that happen in a complex app? Especially now with, microservices, data aggregation. It feels like a tricky design challenge.
It's absolutely a huge design challenge and, yeah, often overlooked. Let's take a fitness tracker app. It collects heart rate, steps, maybe not PHI on their own, right?
Right, it seems harmless.
But what if your app also integrates with the user's clinic portal? Maybe it pulls their medical record number or their prescription history to provide some context. Suddenly, that heart rate data, which was benign before, is now linked to definite PHI. The whole data set might now be considered PHI.
Wow. Okay.
Or think about unique device identifiers like a phone's ID or IP addresses, not PHI by themselves. But if your system logs a device ID alongside, say, symptoms someone entered or lab results they viewed, and then later you cross-reference that device ID with user account info that contains their name or email,
Yeah.
you've just re-identified them.
You've put the pieces back together.
Exactly. That's why HIPAA's rules for de-identification are so strict. It's not just about removing names. It's ensuring there's no reasonable way to link data back, even through clever aggregation. It means thinking really hard about your architecture, your data models, your integration points. Extreme care is needed.
Okay, this is where it's really practical for software companies. What are the actual legal responsibilities? If you're handling this data, what do you absolutely have to do?
Right. The obligations under HIPAA are pretty broad and very strict for any company touching PHI. You've got the security rule for electronic PHI and the privacy rule for all PHI. First and foremost,
Why?
protect the PHI. Ensure its confidentiality, keep it secret. Its integrity, make sure it's accurate and not tampered with.
Yeah.
And its availability, make sure authorized users can get to it when needed. And access only for authorized people.
And how do you do that?
Through safeguards. HIPAA talks about administrative, physical, and technical safeguards. For software, the technical ones are key. We're talking things like robust multi-factor authentication for users. Granular role-based access controls the least privilege idea, only give access needed for the job. Strong, validated encryption is huge. Not just for data at rest in your databases or storage, but also in transit. Every API call, every user session needs end-to-end encryption. Think TLS 1.2 or higher.
And tracking things.
Absolutely. Immutable audit logs. You need to be able to track every time PHI is accessed or changed, who did it and when. Plus, as we said, if you're a BA, you must sign those business associate agreements. Your software also needs to support patient rights, like letting patients access their own data if they ask. And, crucially, breach notification. If something goes wrong and PHI is compromised, you have strict rules and tight deadlines for reporting it.
Okay, so let's take a real-world example. A company building a telemedicine platform. They absolutely must ensure end-to-end encryption for everything, video calls, chat messages, any shared files between patient and provider.
Right, correct. Non-negotiable.
They also need those detailed audit logs, who accessed what, when, and strong multi-factor authentication for all the doctors and nurses using it, maybe using an authenticator app or a hardware key.
Exactly. These aren't just nice-to-haves or best practices. They are legal requirements that need to be designed and built into the system from the very beginning.
It can't be an afterthought.
Definitely not. And think about it from a developer or architect perspective. Your choices matter hugely. How you structure your database, which third-party serverlings you pull in for things like analytics or user login, even how secure your internal development environment is. All of that directly impacts your company's HIPAA compliance.
So it really pushes for that security by design mindset.
It has to. You need to be thinking about compliance right from the initial design phase.
And if a company messes up, what are the actual consequences? Is it just a warning or is it more serious?
Oh, it's far more serious. The consequences can be severe, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, specifically the Office for Civil Rights or OCR, they do enforce this stuff rigorously. You've got significant civil monetary penalties. They're tiered based on how much fault is involved. Fines can range from $100 per violation up to $50,000 per violation.
Per violation? Wow.
Yes. And there's an annual cap of $1.5 million for each specific HIPAA provision violated. so it can stack up incredibly fast. And for deliberate misuse, or really malicious stuff, there can even be criminal penalties. Fines, yes, but also potentially jail time for individuals involved.
Ouch. Beyond fines.
Oh yeah. Organizations can be forced into what are called corrective action plans. These are often expensive, incredibly time-consuming. You might have to completely overhaul your security, implement new policies, train everyone, and sometimes OCR requires you to have outside monitoring for years, reporting back to them. Very intrusive, very costly.
And reputation.
Huge impact. A breach or a major compliance failure leads to a massive loss of trust. Clients pull contracts, patients lose faith, you get terrible publicity. For some companies, especially smaller ones, it can honestly mean business failure. And don't forget class action lawsuits from affected patients or clients. That's another huge financial and reputational hit.
Yeah, we've seen real examples. I remember reading about a cloud EHR vendor. They had to pay $2 million and totally revamp their security. Why? Because a breach exposed thousands of patient records. And the cause was pretty basic stuff. Lack of encryption, bad access controls. It's not theoretical.
Exactly. It happens.
Think about that example. For a growing bespoke software company, which do you think hurts more in the long run? A big fine or that loss of client and public trust? Especially in the bespoke market, where your reputation is basically everything. It really makes you think about priorities, doesn't it?
That's a really insightful question.
Yep.
And I'd argue for a bespoke software company, the loss of trust is almost always far more damaging than the fine itself, even if it's millions.
Really? More than millions of dollars?
Yeah. Well, think about it. A fine, it's painful, it's a big hit. But a financially sound company might be able to absorb it, learn from it, fix the problems, and eventually move on. But in the bespoke world, your reputation is your business. Clients come to you because they trust your skills, your reliability, and crucially, they trust you to handle their sensitive data with extreme care.
Right. That trust is paramount.
So a breach, or even just getting publicly called out for a major compliance failure,
Right.
it can just shatter that trust instantly, overnight. Future potential clients will see the bad press and steer clear. Existing clients might jump ship. Word of mouth, which is so vital in this industry, turns toxic. Rebuilding that reputation, it can take years, if you can even do it. It's often much harder than recovering from a financial penalty. Protecting that trust is job number one.
That makes total sense. Okay, so the best way to really internalize this and figure out how to avoid these pitfalls is probably to look at some real-world examples. Learn from where others went wrong in tech.
Absolutely. Case studies are powerful. We've seen a few notable ones. There was one healthcare SaaS provider, ended up with a multi-million-dollar fine, plus mandated security training for everyone. What did they do wrong?
Yeah.
It was actually a pretty simple but devastating cloud storage mistake. They misconfigured the access permissions on a cloud storage bucket.
Like a S3 bucket or something.
Exactly like
Wow,
that.
right.
And it left thousands of patient records, names, diagnoses, treatment info just wide open on the public internet for anyone to find.
Ouch. It's bad.
Really bad. The key lesson there, even simple configuration errors can be catastrophic. You need regular automated security audits, continuous monitoring. You can't just rely on manual checks for that stuff.
Okay, what else?
Another one involved a health tracking app startup. They built this mobile app for clinics to help patients monitor health metrics. Sounds good, right?
Yeah, seems useful.
But they completely failed to encrypt the PHI, both when it was stored on the device or servers and when it was being sent back and forth. Predictably, there was a data breach. Unauthorized folks got access to sensitive patient data. The result, OCR investigation, big fines, and maybe even worse for them, they lost key partnerships. Clinics just dropped them.
So the takeaway is pretty blunt there.
Yeah, encrypt PHI
Well,
in transit, at rest. It's absolutely non-negotiable. And it's not just a checkbox. You have to build robust security in from day one.
yeah,
It's part of the architecture.
got it. Any others?
One more really telling example.
Yeah.
A software vendor was processing lab results for clinics. Great service, probably very helpful. But they were doing it without having signed business associate agreements with any of those clinics.
Nah, the BAA issue again?
Exactly.
Hmm.
So when a breach happened, and breaches often shine a spotlight on these underlying compliance failures, everyone got investigated. Both the vendor and the clinics got hit with substantial fines.
Yeah.
And the vendor got slammed with negative media attention.
Oh.
Really hurt their ability to get new business.
So that reinforces the BAA point.
Absolutely. Always formalize those responsibilities with a BAA. And it also shows, again, that even if you don't think of yourself as a healthcare company, if you handled PHI for a covered entity, you were under HIPAA's rules.
These cases really drive it home. Seemingly small oversights can have massive consequences. So, if we pull this all together, For the teams listening, what kind of practical processes or maybe even checklists could help software teams avoid these kinds of expensive mistakes? It feels like it needs to become part of the culture, right?
Exactly. Culture is the right word. It has to be embedded in how you operate, not just a compliance check at the end. Process-wise, I'd strongly suggest mandatory recurring HIPAA-focused security training for everyone, developers, QA, product managers, even non-tech staff who might encounter PHI. Everyone needs to understand what PHI is, what a BAA means. Second, adopt a privacy by design and security by design approach. Build HIPAA considerations into every single stage of your software development lifecycle. Requirements, architecture, coding, testing, deployment. It needs to be there from the start.
And specific tools or checks.
Yeah, for practical tools, use automated code analysis tools, static analysis, dynamic analysis. They can catch potential security flaws early in the code itself. Develop standardized security checklists for major releases or new features. Make sure they explicitly cover encryption, at rest, in transit, access controls, audit logging requirements, maybe data minimization or anonymization techniques.
Like a pre-flight check.
Kinda, yeah. And finally, don't underestimate the value of regular independent third-party security audits and penetration testing. They bring fresh eyes, find blind spots your internal teams might miss. It gets you that external validation and helps drive continuous improvement.
That's incredibly practical. Moving from just knowing about HIPAA to actually doing something about it. So let's try to sum this all up. HIPAA. It's not just some regulation off to the side for hospitals. If you're a software company working with health data, it is fundamental, non-negotiable. It touches every layer of your product design, how you deliver services, even your basic infrastructure choices.
Precisely. And being compliant, it's not just about avoiding fines. It protects the patients, yes, but it also protects your business. It's how you build trust and demonstrate reliability in a field that is, let's face it, highly regulated and very competitive. As those cases showed, getting it wrong can cost you dearly, financially and reputationally. It's really an investment in your company's future.
Okay, so as we wrap up, here's a final thought to chew on, something to consider as you go back to your work. We're seeing technologies like AI, advanced analytics, really starting to reshape healthcare. How might the core principles of IP privacy, security, accountability need to adapt to keep pace with these powerful new tools? And maybe more importantly, what innovative solutions will your bespoke software development efforts bring to the table to ensure data privacy and integrity stay protected in this rapidly evolving landscape? And just a reminder, our deep dive today drew heavily from the excellent training materials on HIPAA compliance for software development organizations provided by Special Man Academy. Definitely a great resource if you want to master this topic.